What's up, Scyushi Squad? We are back in more Trove, and today we're going to be talking about the Shadow Hunter changes. So for those of you that are out of the loop, we basically ended up having the Shadowy Spotlight update, Bomber Royale Season 3, and the Sunrise update all come out at once for all console versions. So everybody is caught up. You guys on console are on the same version that we are on PC. Now, why does this matter? And why are we talking about the Shadow Hunter? Well, because you guys more recently ended up getting the Shadowy Spotlight update, which is actually a couple months old. And so my videos are a little bit old as well. And even though we have videos that highlight how the Shadow Hunter worked and so on and so forth, I thought that I would take it upon myself to do a revisit and a very specifically focused video talking about the changes to the class itself. And then I can end up sharing some feedback with you guys to where I think the class ends up fitting in the game right now, just because we kind of ended up, you know, not knowing all of that information right away. Let me actually hop into U11. But before we get started with today's video, let's have a quick word from today's sponsor, GameAgo. Hello everyone, I'm the newest class added to the game, the Solarion. I am black and white. This is canon, okay? It's not that I don't have a colored printer. Anyways, you're probably wondering why I look like this, or maybe you're not, because we've been talking about this in all of our Trove videos lately, but there is actually a contest going on in Trove right now that you can end up taking over to TikTok, which is a Trove cosplay contest, where there is going to end up being a prize of 1,000 euros, which is absolutely insane, but you'll also end up getting some in-game items by just participating in the contest in general. So I'm going to end up putting a link in the description to where you can end up getting more details about the contest. But basically what's going to happen is in the link in the description, there's going to end up being a PDF that you can then end up downloading this beautiful paper craft Solarion head, right? You're going to end up printing it out, fashioning it yourself, and then you're going to record yourself doing something in public on TikTok. I don't know if I don't know. And then you're going to upload that with the hashtag Trove cosplay, hashtag gaming, hashtag cosplay, and by participating in the contest, you'll end up getting your hands on a Sundered Cash, which is a cash shop item in Trove. So pretty cool. I mean, it is only one, but hey, whatever, maybe someone will end up getting lucky. And then on top of that, the first place winner is going to be chosen by the video that has the most likes. That person is going to win 1,000 euros. And then second place is going to be chosen by a jury of GameAgo employees and influencers, and I'm going to end up being one of those influencers. And that second place winner is going to end up also receiving 1,000 euros. The cosplay contest is already on right now, but the closing period will start on August 28th. So you gotta get your TikTok videos up by then. And then the winners are going to end up being chosen September 16th. Anyways, thank you guys for watching, and thanks GameAgo for sponsoring today's video. So let's kind of read the brief summary of the Shadowy Spotlight update. You know, that update not only ended up reworking the Shadow Hunter, that was obviously the main focus of that update, but it reworked pretty much every class in the game, save for a few of them that got very slight changes that didn't really add up to much of anything. But Shadow Hunter ended up getting a very, very big significant change. So we're going to read through the base description, and then I'm going to show you guys real examples of us going out and fighting and stuff. Excuse if you're wondering what these arrows are. This is the new boss radar by Chronicle that I've talked about in a live stream, and we'll talk about in an individual video, just in case you're curious what it's about. So they mentioned that when going into a revamp for the Shadow Hunter, we wanted to keep the core concept of the class focusing on single target basic attacks while adding new tools to assist this playstyle. We removed the Radiant Arrow and replaced it with Shadow Seekers. So that was going to end up being the right click ability that they basically refurbished for the Solarion, and is one of my least favorite abilities in the game currently. So the Shadow Seeker uses a new resource called Seekers that are gained from hitting enemies with a basic attack, or basic attacks hitting enemies that are shadow marked specifically. So if we end up, whoops, I gotta put a bomb on my hotbar. If we go into here and I start base attacking, you're probably just barely going to see these boxes falling out of the enemy. And what essentially is happening is those boxes are being generated when the enemy is shadow marked. They fall onto the ground and then they get sucked up into my character. And then we end up getting this little arrow icon on top of us, and now we have a Seeker. So if I right click, you'll well, you can't see it just because it's not invisible. It's just barely visible. It's going to be a little thing that shows up on the ground that has the same AI as an enemy, where it's going to try and laser in on an enemy that it can end up attacking, which doesn't always end up happening. As you saw, it ended up exploding prematurely and didn't end up dealing any damage to those enemies at all, which is one of the big issues with the Seekers, unfortunately. On top of the fact that they still have a lot of knockback, so you can actually get up to 5 Seekers at once, which can do heaps and heaps of damage, as I'll end up discussing in a moment. But unfortunately, it does have its problems, and the Seekers are not designed very well, which kind of sucks because I'd like to see them function a lot better. But anyways, the Shadow Hunter will now deal increased damage to Shadow Mark targets, and Sun Snare now applies Shadow Mark to enemies damaged by it. So additionally, we have implemented a new ultimate ability called Sacred Arrow, which fires a large arrow applying a damage over time effect, to any targets hit by it. Holding down the ultimate button will continuously fire these arrows until the Shadow Hunter runs out of energy, and Sacred Arrow's damage over time effect can stack multiple times. So I could probably end up just showing you guys a training dummy or something. What is that? Oh my god. That was one of the new mounts that you get out of the crafting table here. Crazy. So anyways, let's move on to all of the abilities and how they're summarized and so on and so forth. So they end up mentioning the passive ability, Dark Whispers. So nearby enemies periodically receive a shadow mark, increasing damage done to them by 5%, as well as making them visible through walls. When the Shadow Hunter uses a basic attack on shadow marked enemies, a small explosion is triggered at the target, dealing 100% damage and granting the class 1 Seeker. Additionally, when damaging, the Shadow Hunter gains a movement speed boost for a short time. This boost refreshes when dodging is already active. So that's crazy that we ended up getting a dodge that increases our movement speed by, I think it's like 40% or something. Yeah, 40%, which single-handedly was one of the best changes to the character. The early iterations of it were pretty bad, where it didn't end up overlapping itself, so you would actually have the movement buff, and then even if you ended up rolling again, it would still end up counting down, and you would have to wait for it to be unapplied to your character before you could reapply it. However, now it actually just stacks on top of itself, so we're refreshing it every time we end up doing a roll. So all you gotta do is just roll periodically, and then you'll just keep the movement speed buff, which is really, really nice. Get out of here, you scum! God, U11 is so strong if I don't end up using pots. So let's move on to the next ability, which is going to end up being the basic attack. This is without the class gem ability, by the way. So let me actually see if I can go into U10 so that we've got a lower difficulty. And then I'm going to kind of show you this. Because funny enough, we actually can take gems off of our characters without using regeminators anymore, thank God. So we can actually just do a real world example of how this base attack is going to function. So you can see it shoots out a lot faster of a projectile now. The damage on it is very, very significant. You can see we're in U10 even without a class gem, and we're still dealing like 25k per shot. But there's going to end up being a couple other benefits to using this ability. So basic shot attacks damage has been increased to 375%, up from 250%. The projectile size has been increased, meaning it'll hit more enemies at one shot. Additionally, basic attacks can shoot through walls and through enemies. So there's actually a little bit of an argument here whether or not you want to use the class gem ability, because if you're trying to fight large groups of enemies, it might actually be more beneficial for you to be able to shoot through all of them rather than using the class gem. Oh my god, this game is such a lag fest. My point still stands. Do you want to use the class gem ability? Oh, no doubt you want to end up using the class gem ability. Obviously, it just deals heaps and heaps more damage. But generally speaking, I do like what they ended up changing with the base attack. It makes me wonder how any of you playing the game now with a brand new, fresh, spanking new baby Shadow Hunter, how much easier is it leveling the class up with the base attack being a lot more functional? I would love to hear your feedback in the comments if any of you guys are new to Trove, or more specifically, new to using the Shadow Hunter, because back when I was leveling up the character, the class was basically useless without its class gem ability. However, now they've kind of rectified that. That said, The class gem effect is going to end up being very similar to what it used to be. So your base attack becomes a rapid stream fire of arrows, which you can see is just absolutely crazy. And they ended up increasing the damage to 200% up from 100%. So we're doing 100% more damage additionally, right? And then additionally, they added the ability to shoot through walls with this effect, not through individual enemies. So that's kind of where the argument lies of whether or not, oh, should I use the base attack versus the class gem? Entirely up to you. I think it's really cool though, and the fact still remains that by being able to shoot through walls, it makes Shadow Hunter one of, if not the best, for dungeon farming. Dungeon farming specifically, I'm not necessarily comparing dungeon farming to speed farming per se, but the fact remains that we can basically just shoot through walls and kill the dungeon boss and move on if we're trying to kill dungeons as quickly as possible, or if we're doing 5-star dungeons in the Sundered Uplands, we can now end up quite literally just blasting away at the objective of the dungeon through all of the floors without having to go all the way back down in order to activate it, right? So that's where it's definitely very, very useful. So then we've also got new primary ability, Shadow Seekers, which I often mistakenly call these Seeker missiles, just because Metroid is stuck in my brain. So this requires one Seeker to use, and on use, launches all Seekers that hunt the closest target and explode on contact, dealing 250% damage. The Shadow Hunter can store up to 5 Seekers at a time, and damage scales with the number of Seekers available when fired. So it scales from 350 to 450 to 600 to 750 to 900%. More Seekers, more better is quite literally what they say. Now, they are a little bit unclear about this. As far as I know, they mean that each of the individual Seekers is going to end up scaling in their damage, and so the last one fired will deal that 900% damage. You gotta get lucky enough for it to connect with an enemy, or quite literally they just mean by having 5 Seekers, they're dealing 900% damage each, or the other option is that they are quite literally just calculating all of them at once so that it doesn't end up doing overkill damage, right? So additionally, Shadow Seekers also deal increased crit damage. So they're going to end up having their damage scaled a little bit higher as well. Again, we already kind of showed what the Seeker missiles look like. However, if this idiot would ever come over here. Yeah, I didn't get a Seeker. However, the fact still remains that shooting 5 of them at once can end up knocking enemies way too far away, and generally speaking, the Seekers are going to be very useful when you need to do heaps of damage. I use that ability a lot when I'm in U11 fighting enemies, but I try to avoid it in 5-star dungeons and stuff where we don't want to end up knocking the boss or the enemies way out of the objective, right? So then there's also going to end up being the Sun Snare, which functionality is basically the exact same as it used to be. However, just some slight changes to the actual ability itself. So Sun Snare throws a trap that detonates on proximity, dealing 350% damage and stunning nearby enemies. It now has an increased area of effect and applies Shadow Mark to targets, which is great because back in the day you used to just randomly get Shadow Mark on targets, so that's awesome that we can actually do it manually now. This ability is actually going to be one of the best abilities for dealing with large groups of enemies, because as mentioned before, when we are using our class gem ability, we actually aren't able to shoot through enemies. So what can happen is stuff like this, where I'm damaging the enemies that are in the way of the boss. However, if we end up just throwing down our snares, you're going to see not only are they dealing heaps of damage, but when combined properly with our other attacks, we can use it to get around the enemy and end up attacking them outright, which ends up being very, very helpful. So then there's going to end up being the new ultimate ability. So the ultimate is going to be Sacred Arrow. So it fires a large damaging arrow of energy that deals 450% damage every second for 7 seconds. The first contact arrow with the enemy will deal 550% damage. This arrow pierces targets and blocks as long as the ability button, or target and blocks, sorry, and then they put a period. As long as the ability button is held down, you will continuously fire arrows until running out of energy. It slows the player down greatly while you're holding the button down, and the damage over time effect can be stacked multiple times on the same target. The ability also has a 45-second cooldown, which is brutal, so we can tap it once, shoot the arrow out, and yeah, it's not bad, but you can see the damage over time effect obviously is going to end up being pretty darn good. But most of all, it's the fact that it does the stacking damage that is going to end up making it more worthwhile, and what ends up making the Shadow Hunter more of a boss killer now, because Shadow Hunter is at one of those beautifully specific stages in Trove where it's not slow enough, so it's not very slow, so you can actually use it for speed farming. It's not going to be the best for speed farming, but it's going to be very, very nice because of the consistent movement speed of just using the dodge. It also handles large area of enemies very well with the snare effect, the seekers combined with that, and then of course the ultimate ability being able to shoot out rapid fire, and each one of these arrows tagging the target and all stacking on top of each other makes the Shadow Hunter work very, very well for dealing heaps and heaps of damage to targets. Now, this is why you would also build the Shadow Hunter differently now versus the way that you used to, because attack speed is going to end up being a stat that is factored in when you are holding down your ultimate ability. So you might argue, well, I don't need attack speed when I'm using the Classroom ability because that's completely unaffected. The Classroom ability gives you a set value of attack speed, not even the attack speed itself. It basically makes it so that your base attacks have nothing to do with attack speed anymore. It's just straight damage at a very consistent interval no matter what. So attack speed was useless on the Shadow Hunter, despite the fact that way back in the day when Mantle of Power was up, the Mantle of Power update came out in Trove. I don't know why everyone tried to argue otherwise with me. It was very weird. But anyways, the ultimate ability, however, is affected by attack speed. So you want to end up having more attack speed so that you can end up dealing more and more damage with the ultimate before you end up using up all of your energy. And energy recharge is not going to end up being a factor because you can't obviously regenerate energy while you're still using your ult at the same time. Maybe, I don't know, but anyways, then there's going to end up being lastly the tactical shot hidden effect. So this is going to end up being the best hidden effect with the crystal gems. So they ended up adding this ability in. The tactical shot hidden effect has been replaced by the tactical seekers hidden effect. So the way that these work is when enemies take damage from the Shadow Hunter's Sacred Arrow, your ultimate ability, a Shadow Seeker will fire from the Shadow Hunter and attack the closest target. Now, again, we do have the problem of the Seekers being very unorthodox and rarely ever hitting their target, unfortunately. However, when it works, that is just additional damage. It's not much, but it is still additional damage that will end up adding up over time. And as far as I know, like it says that it stacks with the Sacred Arrow. I think it stacks with the damage over time effect. I could be wrong about that because I don't really use hidden ring effects that much because I don't really feel the need to. But yeah, anyways, those are going to end up being the big broad strokes of the changes to the Shadow Hunter. Now, lastly, there was something else that they did end up adding with the Sunrise update, which, with the Solarion and so on and so forth, because now that we've got crystal gems in the game, our power rank can actually go to insane levels now. And they ended up actually making it so that all of the subclass abilities in the game will now benefit from being at 35k and 40k power rank. That's right. Back before the Sunrise update was even a thing, the highest power rank that you could benefit from on a subclass ability was only 30,000 power rank. Now, unfortunately, a lot of these subclass abilities are still completely broken, but the Shadow Hunters in particular, we're going to talk about if you have a Shadow Hunter at 40k PR, this is what it's going to end up giving you. It's going to end up making magic attacks can activate Searing Light, a damage over time effect that deals 40% damage every 0.1 second for 3 seconds. Now, there is an internal cooldown to that ability, so I don't really know how useful it's going to end up being to use that on another character. Anyways, that's going to do it for me today, everybody. Smash like, sub for more, buy the merch you want, support the channel, and have yourselves a wonderful day, ladies and gentlemen. Excuse me that this video is out so late, but generally speaking, I've been very, very busy during the day, and so I've been doing a bulk of my recording and editing at night, and so that's why I'm trying to get these videos out to you guys so that I'm still having videos every day. It's just later in the day.